Walk into a cinema in Mumbai, turn on a television in Buenos Aires, or scroll through a feed in Tokyo, and you will find the exact same stars, brands, and story tropes. American screen culture is humanity's closest thing to a universal visual language. But a century ago, this level of global reach was impossible. American entertainment was scattered across physical venues, heavily localized, and restricted to traveling vaudeville circuits and brick-and-mortar stage shows. When early motion pictures arrived, they found their audience in Nickelodeons. With a 5-cent admission, these cheap, accessible theaters offered crowded, working-class neighborhoods a new kind of storytelling. The man who controlled this new technology had no intention of sharing it. Thomas Edison formed the Motion Picture Patents Company to dominate every aspect of the industry through aggressive patent enforcement and relentless litigation. If an independent filmmaker wanted to shoot, distribute, or exhibit a movie, they had to pay Edison's trust or risk being shut down. Because the trust owned the patents on the physical film hardware, like the gears and rollers inside this exact machine, they held a chokehold on creative expression. Before Hollywood, American film was a closed East Coast system. It was a local oligopoly, rigidly controlled and structurally incapable of scaling into an international empire. The people who broke that monopoly were outsiders, a wave of independent filmmakers, predominantly Jewish entrepreneurs fleeing poverty and exclusion in Eastern Europe, recognized the commercial potential of movies. To escape Edison's patent police, these visionaries moved 3,000 miles west to a dusty farming town in Southern California. Out here, land was cheap, the weather permitted year-round filming, and the East Coast courts were too far away to enforce injunctions. Figures like Louis B. Mayer capitalized on this geographic freedom by pioneering a business model known as vertical integration. A single studio controlled everything: the production of the film, the distribution networks, and the physical theaters where the movies were shown. The founders established a vertically integrated factory system designed to mass-produce modern mythology on an industrial scale. With the industrial pipeline built, the studios faced an immediate barrier. Selling stories globally meant overcoming a logistical hurdle, a fractured international market with hundreds of different languages. Early cinema's lack of synchronized dialogue became a strategic advantage. Filmmakers abandoned spoken exposition, relying entirely on visual cues. Performers bypassed words altogether by targeting human psychology. They distilled social anxieties and everyday frustrations into physical gestures, using exaggerated facial expressions to trigger immediate empathy in the viewer. No one mastered this faster than Charlie Chaplin. Through his tramp persona, he paired frantic slapstick with poignant vulnerability, creating an emotional shorthand that audiences from Paris to Shanghai understood instantly. Buster Keaton offered a different frequency, relying on stoic precision and dangerous stunt work. His deadpan reactions to falling buildings and runaway trains articulated human resilience against a chaotic world. By coding their narratives in movement rather than speech, these studios created a universal emotional algorithm. The Dream Factory had found a way to sync the psychological reactions of audiences across the globe. To maintain high attendance week after week, the studios realized they needed to sell permanent, iconic personas rather than relying on one-off storylines. This required the deployment of glamour photography. Studio publicists and master photographers used manipulated lighting, soft focus, and rigorous retouching to erase flaws, elevating human actors into untouchable, mythic archetypes. Marilyn Monroe was engineered to be the ultimate blonde bombshell. Her studio-crafted image carefully balanced overt sensuality with a gentle approachability, producing a highly specific, highly marketable version of femininity. Audrey Hepburn offered an entirely different archetype. Her styling prioritized cosmopolitan elegance and providing audiences with an alternative, yet equally constructed, aspirational ideal. For men, the machine produced figures like Humphrey Bogart, bathed in stark, high-contrast shadows. He became the visual definition of world-weary, stoic American masculinity. By curating these public personas, the star system successfully weaponized human aspiration. It established a homogenized, easily exportable standard for beauty and desirability that soon saturated the globe. Once the audience's emotional trust was secured, the studios began delivering specific ideological payloads wrapped neatly inside genre conventions. The Western packaged the myth of rugged individualism. solitary figures navigating vast frontiers, reinforced a uniquely American vision of moral certainty and self-reliance. These stories framed the American dream as a reward for individual effort, turning the material signs of success, the cars, the suits, the suburban homes, into objects of intense public longing. This diagram models the commercial logic behind that longing. A heroic character interacts with a generic item, instantly transferring their mythic status onto that object. As this propagates outward, it convinces a growing middle class that mass consumption is the ultimate marker of success. Hollywood functioned as a global marketplace of aspiration, providing the public with a specific map of what and how to desire. From a few independent filmmakers dodging patent laws, Hollywood grew into an industrial titan. The searchlights and massive crowds of its mid-century premieres marked its transition into the emotional infrastructure of the modern world. Yet this dominance carried deep contradictions. The machinery that connected disparate cultures also enforced rigid exclusions. Early cinematic tropes relied heavily on offensive racial stereotypes, aggressively marginalizing minorities while pushing a homogenized vision of reality. This is the paradox of American cinematic power. It provides a source of universal inspiration and artistic beauty, while simultaneously operating as an engine for aggressive commercialization and conformity. As the United States approaches its 250th anniversary, its most enduring empire isn't geographic or military. It is cultural and psychological. Ultimately, the Dream Factory's enduring achievement remains the mass production of the architecture of the modern human imagination.